back to Dinner for Her, a podcast about historical women with flavor. I am your host, Mandy Walker. Each episode, my guest and I will have a good conversation about a woman from the past they find inspiring. Then we'll have a meal together themed around that woman's life. It could be her favorite dish, or one that played an important role in her life, or even just something central to her work and culture. Tonight, I am here with yet another awesome woman in my life, Robin Bowen Powell. Wasn't sure if you still go by Powell.
I still go.
I thought so, but for reasons. I just wanted to check. Robin and I have been friends for over 30 years. It embarrasses her when I say this, but she's probably the kindest, most caring person I have ever met. She is not a saint, mind you. There is a feisty temper in there, but it usually comes out when she's tackling an injustice done to a vulnerable person or an abused animal. Robin is in the top 5 role models in my life, and I honestly can't tell you right now who would be 2 to 5, but she's definitely number 1. I love her so much, and I'm thrilled and honored that she's agreed to sit down with me. Robin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you chose the phenomenal, brilliant force of nature that was Ida B. Wells-Barnett as our guest of honor?
Give me way too much credit, but I really appreciate it.
I knew you were going to say that. It's all true. It's every bit of it.
No, I love you. You are one of my oldest friends.
Yeah.
And
chronologically, longest friendship.
I appreciate you so much. There's so few friends, I think, that stay with you over years. And you're definitely, thank you.
Well,
you're one that's there.
Well, I think you and I are very much the type of people that we don't keep people in our lives at this point that don't serve, whatever our morals are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that, we're not prudes. I don't want to act like, I don't think our moral standards are really that high.
Really not. Basic humanity.
Right. Exactly. And so I think that for that reason, you and I both keep our circle pretty small. But anyway, go ahead.
But anyway, so I wanted to do Ida. She is a force of nature.
Mm.
More people need to know about Ida. Mm-hmm. I didn't know enough about Ida. The world's a little scary right now. Mm-hmm. And I think more people need to be aware of people like Ida, women of color, that have played an important role in making sure people trying to get the rights for people.
Getting those rights too. Yeah. And I don't want to jump ahead too much. I always worry that, of course, I'm the editor here, so I can just cut out anything I need to. But I always worry that I'm going to jump ahead into something we're going to talk about later. But one of the things that I was so grateful for when I started, I was super excited when you picked her because, obviously I like the lady. She's in my logo for my podcast.
Yeah.
What I knew about her, I always liked. Like, she was a Tennessean. I knew the story about that we're going to get to later about the train, and I knew that she spoke up for injustices for African Americans during the Jim Crow South. That was really all I knew about her. I am embarrassed and ashamed that I don't know more, and I'm angry that I don't know more because, as you pointed out, a lot of the rights that we enjoy in this country, at least still currently for the moment, we wouldn't have them if it wasn't for women like Ida and very, very, I don't even like to say women like Ida because it is true, and that's one of the things we'll get into later, that it took many, many people. Mm-hmm. But the sheer amount of things that she did that ended up making this world a better place for people is insane. And I love that you picked her because I agree that more people need to not only know her story, but they need to understand that one of the greatest lessons of her advocacy is that all of this can be taken away from you
so quickly.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, I think now, attempts to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, we're going to get into that because that was actually the time frame that she was born into, is where rights that were enjoyed by people at one point were being rolled back and taken away. And it would have happened on a much larger scale and much more quickly. And I don't think that we would have ended up having the civil rights era had people like Ida not seen the bullshit and said, I'm not having this, and put their life on the line. to stand up for the things that they believed in. So, yeah, I'm so excited to get into this. So let me give you a real quick content warning, folks, before we get into the biography on Ida. Her life's work was centered around fighting for justice for African Americans and women during the Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras. Most famously, her journalism shined a light on the horrors of lynching. For anyone unfamiliar with the term, lynching is the public killing of someone for a perceived crime outside of the bounds of law. I know a lot of times we like to think of lynching as hanging someone. That was often how that happened, but oftentimes it could have been shooting, it could have been stabbing, anything that is where someone is taken outside of the bounds of law and vigilante justice is applied to them. It's going to get real dark in this episode, guys, so please proceed to listen with caution if this is a topic that's triggering for any reason. Robin, do you want to tell us a little bit about Ida?
Sure. Ida Bell Wells was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi on July 16, 1862, just 6 months before the official end of slavery in the South under the Emancipation Proclamation. Her parents were James Madison Wells and Elizabeth Lizzie Warrenton. James's mother was an enslaved woman named Peggy, and his father was the white man holding her in bondage. When James was 18, his father apprenticed him to architect Spires Bowling to learn the trade of carpentry. Here he met Lizzie, who was Bowling's enslaved cook. After the end of the war, the family stayed for a time to work for Bowling until he became enraged when James Wells exercised his right to vote for a Republican candidate instead of the Southern Democrat Bowling supported. Fortunately, James and Lizzie were able to quickly find other work since they were both skilled in their trades. Education was extremely important to the Wells. They enrolled all 8 children into school. Initially, Lizzie attended as well. James's white father had allowed him to learn to read, but it was actually illegal, and for that reason, Lizzie was illiterate until after emancipation. James was very active in politics and became a staunch advocate for the advancement of the formerly enslaved people. When Ida was 16, she lost both parents and an infant brother to yellow fever epidemic raging across that part of the South. She had been visiting her grandmother's farm at the time. Once she received word of her parents' passing and the intention to break up her remaining siblings among relatives, Ida immediately stepped up to take responsibility, refusing to allow them to be separated. She found work as a teacher by lying on her application to say she was 18. With her grandmother's help, she was able to keep the family together. And when her grandmother suffered a stroke 2 years later, Ida and her 2 remaining sisters moved in with an aunt near Memphis. Ida began working in the Woodstock school system, and by this point she was already quite passionate about education and politics. 40 years before Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks, Ida refused to leave her seat in the first-class women's car to go into the crowded smoking section when ordered to do so by an overzealous conductor. She eventually sued the railroad and won a judgment of $500, only to have it overturned on appeal. While continuing to teach elementary school, Wells became increasingly active as a journalist and writer. She accepted an editorial position for a small Memphis journal, the Evening Star, and she began writing weekly articles for the Living Way newspaper under the pen name Iola. Articles she wrote under her pen name attacked racist Jim Crow policies, and in 1889 she became editor and co-owner of the Free Speech and Headlight, a black-owned newspaper established by the Reverend Taylor Nightingale and based at the Bill Street Baptist Church in Memphis. In 1891, Wells was dismissed from her teaching post by the Memphis Board of Education due to her articles criticizing conditions in the black schools of the region. She then began concentrating her energy on writing articles for the Living Way and the Free Speech and Headlight. When her friend and Memphis grocer Thomas Henry Moss Sr. was murdered by a white lynch mob along with 2 other black men, Ida was outraged enough to change the entire course of her life and history when she began her journalistic crusade to bring awareness to the evils of lynching and its prevalence in the South. Later that year, her series of editorials calling out the illegality and horror of lynching enraged a group of powerful white men, and they formed a mob and burned down her newspaper. Ida was fortunately on vacation in Manhattan at the time. Friends and family cautioned her the mob was monitoring the railways for her return. So Ida decided to stay put and never again return to the South. Eventually settling in Chicago, Ida began writing and publishing pamphlets detailing her journalistic findings on the lynching. She did 2 speaking tours of the UK, leading to the New York Times to refer to her as a slanderous and nasty-minded mulattress. 3 years later, that same New York Times would print an announcement of her marriage to prominent Chicago attorney Ferdinand Barrett. While marriage and eventually 4 children would create a challenge for Ida's advocacy, she did not allow it to overcome her mission. Barrett was supportive of her work, and Ida once joked, "I honestly believe that I am the only woman in the United States who ever traveled throughout the country with a nursing baby to make political speeches."
I love that.
Yep. Ida began to expand her advocacy to include fighting for women's suffrage, particularly African American women. She would make many allies in the feminist movement and a few foes. Ever blunt and tenacious in her defense of the causes, some fellow crusaders found her brash and inflexible. She was one of the founding members of the NAACP, but quickly distanced herself from the organization over what she perceived as their apathy and unwillingness to use force when necessary in defense of black people. Ida passed away of kidney failure on March 25th, 1931.
That is, man, like, that could have been 42 pages longer, and we would have still left things out. Normally in these podcasts, the biography is a lot more of a sketch, but I deliberately wanted us to have a longer, more in-depth, because when Robin and I were talking about recording this episode, one of the things that we discussed was the fact that we are 2 Whitey McWhite ladies having this conversation. Like, we both have had our ancestry done, and I tease Robin all the time that she is like the original white person.
Because I was so disappointed.
Yeah, you were like 99.9% England.
I'm as white as you can get. Yeah.
Did you have like your exotic part was like 0.5% Swedish or something like that?
Yeah.
Right.
Not a lot.
So we're not necessarily going to have the same nuance and depth of understanding of Ida's experiences that women of color would have. But we didn't want to not do the episode just because we're not going to get it perfect, because as Robin discussed earlier, we really feel like more people need to know about Ida.
Yeah.
So there are so many things in that description that we left out that I kind of had a hard time when I was talking to Robin about how we should get ready for this podcast. And so I told her that we should just make a list of the top 5 things that we really wanted to discuss about her that were not necessarily fleshed out in that biography. So Robin, what you got? What's your number 1 there?
She believed that she believed in the press.
Yeah.
She believed in the press and its potency, its ability to reach and elevate her people.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm glad that was the first thing you brought up, because I think one of the things that I want to make clear is the whole scope of her work and her life's work being about lynching. Initially, at that time, one of the things I learned through this is that at that time, most black people did not understand the scope of what was really going on with lynching. She spoke in her biography about how before Thomas was killed, her friend was killed, she believed the old lie that most of the time, of course it was upsetting, but this is before most people had telephones. There were a few people here and there, but this is the rural South. Mm-hmm. Most people could not afford a telephone. You didn't have the instant news available at your fingertips that we do today. And no one before her had sat down and done the scholarship on what was really going on with lynching. And she said in her biography that she believed before that happened to Thomas Melton that probably most of these people did deserve what they got when they were lynched. It was only after her friend was lynched.
Personal experience.
Right. And she knew this man. And do you want to talk a little bit more about, did you remember like some of what we learned about Thomas Melton? Do you want me to get into that? Or?
Completely up to you on that. I just think that that's what drove her. That she didn't necessarily.
Yeah.
That wasn't her goal.
Yeah, she didn't. I mean, she had already recognized that there was a world of injustice out there, but she was much more optimistic about if you stand up for your rights. Because I guess this is a good time to like talk a little bit about Reconstruction South and Jim Crow South, a topic about neither which I think I'm comfortable saying neither one of us are necessarily experts in that field. But one of the things that I've learned through our reading and through our research was that there were a lot of rights that were given to African Americans or recognized, you can say, for African Americans after the Civil War down here that were reinforced. I mean, you had African Americans that it's really mind-boggling to me when I think about these people that have been enslaved for 250 years. The vast majority, I heard a statistic in one of the biographies that I watched that 90% of the African American population was illiterate when they got, and I don't know what the statistics are in the white population at the time, but that's vastly more than, it was illegal. It was literally, you could be punished for teaching black people to read.
The fact that her father was not illiterate.
Right. Is one of the reasons that she enjoyed a comfortable middle class lifestyle once they came out of slavery. It's kind of crazy. Like, you think about what we thought we knew about slavery, and to me it's really fascinating that there was immediately this black middle class right after slavery, and that's so impressive to me. I mean, you gotta imagine, like, it's almost impossible to really imagine at our point in life and with our skin tone what it's like to be held in bondage for that long, have every family system broken up. Her mother, we didn't get really into this, but Lizzie, her mother, had actually been sold several times before she got to Squire Bowling or Spire Bowlings. She had been separated from her family and was never able to find them again after Reconstruction. Her husband, James, was only literate because his father never had other children with his white wife, and so he kind of, we don't really obviously know a lot about what their relationship was. I read that he was kind of a companion to his father, which is not that unusual. There's a really good book called The Washingtons of Wessington Plantation, which is from Washington County here in Tennessee, I believe. But it was a big family. They have a lot of like famous descendants now, actually. But the last generation, one of them was quite obviously the son of the man that owned them when slavery ended, and he was his manservant. And it's just really hard to wrap your mind around how you can hold your child in slavery, but they did, and it was very common. These men did it.
Blows my mind that you can have a child and you can think
that it's okay.
Yeah.
That you can treat them that way.
Yeah.
Sell them away. A lot of them did.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of evidence too that Lizzie herself was descended from, I can't remember if it was her father was a plantation owner or if it was her mother's father, but she also had white ancestors, as do 40%. I think if there's some statistic that 40% of the genome of the average African American is European. That didn't happen from choice.
No.
That wasn't because there was not this big romantic love story. I mean, we can't really say that there was never any kind of but just inherently when you behave as if you own another human being, and I'm not going to say that you do, because I don't care what the law says. Morally, you can never own another human being. It's just wrong and immoral. But they had all the power over them. Yeah. And so, at any rate, it's crazy to me that this man took his, he probably only taught his son to read and put the care into him that he did, because he didn't have any legitimate children of his own. But he did, and so he taught his son to read, he taught James to read, which then helped them out when they got out of slavery. But they were ready to hit the ground running. The Wells family, unlike a lot of other people, they had a little bit of income. I mean, both of the parents in that family had marketable skills. Lizzie was referred to as a famous cook in the area. And, of course, he was a carpenter, which is an incredibly valuable trade to have. And so he got out and then like immediately got his kids educated, worked as on the board of trustees at a local college that was established, got his children enrolled there, immediately instilled this love of language and learning and bettering yourself. And I think it was probably a time of great optimism for people. But then guess what happened? Much like what's going on now, I saw a lot of parallels in that. Did you?
I did see a lot of parallels. Yeah.
Like, don't you see that? To me, it seems very obvious that a lot of this regression that we're doing right now is this fear of certain people in power, when we just went through this big period under the Obama administration of a big leap forward for certain segments of our society. Gay people getting, a universal health, or not universal health care, but closer to universal health care, gay marriage being legalized, more tolerance for immigration. We were just becoming a more tolerant society in general, and that threatened certain people
enough to work desperately to reverse us, and take us back.
And they did it, and I believe they followed a lot of the playbook from the Jim Crow South, because that's what happened here. You had black people that started to get elected to politics. They held power in ways that they had never, and it was incredibly insulting to a lot of the white, not only white landowners, but poor whites too, who the one thing that they had always had to make them feel better about their stance in society is that at least they weren't enslaved.
Right.
And so now you're being told that you have to treat these people with equality, and a lot of them were really threatened by that. So I'm saying all that to say, I think she was very, in the beginning, before her friend was lynched, she had a lot of she was very aware that, that she wanted to stand up, and she was passionate. But I think that woman was born with a pair of shoes on her feet and she just hit the ground running. But she wasn't as cynical.
No, I think she not desperately. I think she wanted to, I think education was very important to her, and she felt like education for these people, her people that had not had education before. I think that's what she was focused on, was educating the people until the time that she was confronted with lynching in her own
how
life.
Bad it was.
Right. And that changed the course of her life.
Yeah.
And pushed her into a more...
in American history, really.
Yeah, really, yeah. It pushed her more into that investigative journalism and reporting on these events, and taking a stand for what she felt was wrong.
Right.
And trying to make it right.
Right. Which, man, I identified with so much, because, the way that they talk about her being prickly and blunt, and by the way, that's something I love about her writing. They say that a lot. Like, our goal here, and I'm going to say this probably 4 or 5 times, is that we really want, if you're listening to this, to get you interested in Ida so that you will go and find out more about her for yourself, because I cannot stress enough that there's no way it would have to be a 20-part series for us to really get into everything that this woman accomplished or tried to accomplish in her lifetime. I think, like you said, initially she was focused on, if I just do enough to stand up for my people. And I recognize this so much in my younger self, is like, well, the problem is that people just aren't educated enough about it. So if I go and I tell them that this is reality, and I show them where they can find the proof of this, my mind works like that, so they'll come to the light too. And she was still somewhat in that mind frame, even though she'd already been through some things. I loved the story about her on the train, because she bit that guy.
When he tried to move her forcefully into that smoking section,
she bit him. And that was the second time. I didn't know that until today, actually, that was actually the second time. Apparently she had ridden in that train, which, as a Southerner, having heard what I thought I knew about our past before the civil rights era of the 50s and 60s, I was actually kind of surprised at how many rights and freedoms Black people had before we started rolling them back during Jim Crow. She had been in that first class compartment several times because she would commute back and forth from where she was working to her aunt's house in Memphis. And it was just within that year, which I imagine as this was just as time was moving on, you know, you had the KKK starting up, and you had more and more rumbling of Black people becoming free is a threat to the white status quo. And so all of a sudden you've got this one conductor who just has a problem with her. And that was the second time that he had tried to remove her. The first time he wasn't successful. This was the second time, and he was going to bodily drag her back there. I love that she did.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. So when she stood up for herself on that train, and then when she sued them and won, and then the Supreme Court sided with them, I think that was the beginning of when she started to get a little bit more, I don't want to even use the word militant, because militant makes it sound like that she's just kind of petulant and angry. She had every right to feel the way that she did. I think that was when she started to really grasp or feel the first inkling of how deeply entrenched this fight might be.
I think she was, her mindset perhaps prior to that was that it was just going to take time. You know, it was just, but the law was on her side. You know,
right?
That was going to be. It was going to be okay. It was going to be a struggle maybe to get everybody on board, but everything was headed in the right direction.
Right.
If
she was just patient enough, vocal enough, stood up enough, you know, people would do the right thing. Right.
You know, laws for sure. But then when the law turned on her, when they rescinded or repealed her judgment. Yeah.
I think that is when she started to get just a little bit more cynical.
Yeah.
But it really took the murder of Thomas Melton before she got truly, truly angry about the injustice that was going on here. I want to double check. I've been calling him Tom. I knew it. I just went back and checked my notes, and I realized I've been calling Thomas Melton, and his name was Thomas Moss. But he was actually the man that was lynched. That was the turning point for Ida's whole world. Was a grocer in Memphis. He owned a grocery store in a black area of Memphis called the People's Grocery, and it was very successful. And it had been open for 2 or 3 years by the time the incident happened that led to him being lynched. He had an employee that was defending a black child. There was a black child. This is so crazy how petty this entire thing was. There was a black child and a white child playing outside of the grocery, playing marbles, and the black kid won. And they started fighting, and the black kid was winning the fight between him and the white kid. And the white kid's father sees what's going on, so he comes over and starts just beating on this child. So one of the employees of the People's Grocery comes out and starts defending this child. Next thing you know, it's a whole mob situation. Several things happened in the next few days where, you know, white mobs showed up to try to confront the owners of the grocery and to accuse them of trying to start a riot. And they eventually did arrest Thomas Moss and his employee and another man. I believe it was the co-owner of the grocery. Thomas Moss and his wife Betty were actually friends of Ida. She knew all of them, but she was friends with him to the extent that she was their child's godmother, and they were very close. So when that happened, when they took him out of the city, but they arrested him on flimsy grounds, and then they took him outside the city and shot all of 3 of these men to death. That just burned her up. And when she started writing these editorials that were just flat out calling out the fact that, a lot of these lynchings that were happening not because black people were doing the crimes that they were committed or they were accused of, but because of usually some very specific things. Either, like her friend, they were in competition with a white person financially. They were a minister or somebody in an educator who was speaking about black civil rights. Or the most common characteristic of these lynchings was that it was quote unquote rape of a black or white woman by a black man. And almost never was that when Ida started digging into this, when she was the first one that really put all of the pieces together about what was really behind lynching. And she did some fantastic journalistic work and investigation, and she started to realize, and she was very proud of the fact, they were very, I don't know, proud, but she was very vocal about the fact that all of her sources for this were white newspapers and white journalists and white court systems. But she started to discover that almost never was there an actual crime proven by the person that was lynched, particularly when it came to the relationships between black men and white women. Now, I am not going to claim that a black man has never raped a white woman, or that a black man had never raped a white woman to that point. I will say that in a segregated, especially in a society that was that segregated, it was incredibly rare. Most of the time, crime is committed against people of your own race, especially then. And one of her arguments was, you want to talk about black people and black men particularly as if they are these animals that can't control their lusts. Why is this just happening now? Or when one of the things that was true of the Civil War is that the vast majority of young white men were not around. They were off fighting. So the only men of, young, healthy men that were around, the vast majority of them were black. And you didn't have any of this.
Which should have been.
Right. You would think.
If it were really an issue.
Right. If it was really about a race of people who were truly as barbaric and animalistic as the lynchers claimed, why did you not see them just wholesale slaughtering and abusing white women during the 4 years of the Civil War? And then again, even during Reconstruction and Jim Crow, the vast majority of the time, what it would turn out to be is, if there was any validity to the story of them and the white woman in question, it's because they had a relationship with the white woman.
Like an honest to goodness.
Right.
Yeah, the relationship.
Did you read did you go and dig down into any of the rabbit holes about the people because we read her pamphlet, Southern Horrors. Mm-hmm. Did you happen to just get down a rabbit hole and look at the stories of any of the lynchings that she specifically mentioned?
No, unfortunately I did not.
Well, I went through a few of them, and it just, it's awful, and it's heartbreaking. And in some of the situations, I was happy to know, which is just, it's hard to even say happy because it's just what a decent person should do, but it was so very rare. There were a few times that you would say, a white woman would end up having a mixed race child out of wedlock, or, just get caught having a relationship with a black man, and they would refuse to name that man.
I did see stories about that.
Yeah. There were a few of those. Mm-hmm. The vast majority, white women would get caught in some sort of relationship, and they would say that they had been abused. And it shames me and hurts me to say that, because another portion of, as a woman, and as a woman who has been sexually abused at one point, I hate to say that because I don't want anybody to hear that and think that's the norm. This was a crazy time where that woman could have lost her life.
She was defending herself.
Right.
A lot of times.
It's not okay.
No.
But I understand it.
It's understandable.
Yeah. It's not shocking, I guess, is the best. That, of all of the things that are in these horrible stories, that is one of the least shocking parts of all of it, is that a white woman would be terrified to admit that she had been in
willingly.
That she had willingly been in a relationship. I gotta be careful how to say this. When I was 10 years old, and this was 10 or 12, it was between 10 and 12. So this would have been 85 to 87, 1985 to 1987. One of my beloved family members, two of them actually, took me out to Crystal's and to have lunch one day. And before I say this, I will say these, but I don't believe either one of these people would have the same conversation with me now in this day and age. But this was not that long ago. They took me to Crystal's and had lunch, and we're just sitting there, and I'm just, tween Mandy, eating my Crystals. And they bring up the fact that at that time, my three closest friends in the neighborhood were these three black kids that I spent tons of time at their house. Their mom would take me to cheerleading practice. Yes, I was a cheerleader for about 15 minutes. I just wanted the jacket.
Valid.
Yeah. But they would, we would play. We had like a little bike gang in the neighborhood. and one of the oldest one was actually the one I was closest to. And he was several years older than me. But no one knew the word for autism at that time. But he was clearly on the spectrum, looking back on it. And so he was emotionally more in line with where I was. And he was a big comic book nerd. And so Ivan and I were besties. But at any rate, they were like, so, you these boys that you're hanging out with, what's going on there? And I was like, they're my friends. I don't know. We're buddies. And my relative looked at me and said, it's perfectly fine for you to be friends with these boys, but I just want you to know that if you bring one home, I will put a bullet in your head myself.
That's horrendous.
And the other relative that was with me just sat there and nodded.
Just agreed.
Mm-hmm. And these boys, it's crazy because I've had conversations with them as adults, and they were the only black kids that were in our neighborhood at that time in the suburbs where we lived. And they had tons of friends. I mean, their family was, middle class. Their dad, I think, was an accountant maybe or something with IBM. Their mother had a white collar job, maybe a nurse. When you're a kid, you don't really pay attention to what your friends' parents
Much
do.
less your, yeah.
Right. Both of them, but Ivan unfortunately passed away pretty young, but the two boys that are still alive, the men that are still alive, they're both white collar jobs. One of them's a lawyer, grew up to be, and we've talked about it, and they did not know how racist most of the families that they were playing with were.
Which is true even within my family.
Yeah.
It was, sadly, growing up, it was always, it's fine to be friends.
But that better be it.
That better be it. Don't bring a boyfriend home.
Yeah.
That has a different skin tone.
This is kind of off topic, but we didn't have a lot of Hispanic people in Tennessee when we were growing up.
No.
I didn't meet my first Hispanic kid until I was 11, and then didn't know another one until my friend Angel when I was 14, 15, freshman, sophomore year. And so I didn't really have any opinions about, first of all, I've always thought racism was stupid. I'm not a saint. I don't know why I was born like this, but from the moment that I was fully aware that there was a difference between the races, it's just anything that is a judgment of someone for something that they were born with has just never made sense to me. And I knew too many stupid white people and smart black people to buy into this idea that intelligence or kindness or any of that is inherently involved in your skin tone. So while I grew up in a very racist family, I personally have never really understood racism. But at any rate, Angel brought me home one day, and two of my relatives meet me from school because I didn't, I was a freshman, I didn't drive. So he dropped me off, and I go in, and two of my relatives are standing there, and they're staring, and they go, "Was that boy that brought you here Mexican?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "What are you doing and getting in the car with a Mexican dude?" And I was like, "We're racist against Mexicans? We don't even know any Mexicans. How are you going to be racist against a culture you don't even know?" Stupid.
It is stupid. And we discussed this even before when I was choosing. I've never understood that either.
Yeah.
And it makes me mad. How? Why?
Yeah. Yeah, like how do you justify it? I know that, probably 100 years from now, people will look back on things that we just think of as normal and what have you. And honestly, heck, I can say, I'm not going to get too far on a high horse because, like, just using gay as a slur. When we were younger, people said it all the time. I'm sure that I know I said it.
I said it, yeah.
And had gay friends. And didn't think less of them for being gay.
No.
But also was completely clueless to how painful and hurtful it would be to hear me say something was gay and mean bad or stupid, or any kind of. So I know it's hard to put ourselves in the mindset, and I think a lot of times it's useless to really try to put yourself in the mindset. But given the climate that we're in today, I'm trying really hard to grasp how people can have that much hate in their heart. I feel like I understand it less now.
Right.
After reading so much about her.
Yeah.
Like how can you look at somebody as intelligent and articulate and methodical in their research and think of her as anything less than brilliant?
I think it's fear, sometimes jealousy.
Yeah, but for the grace of God, I go,
yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. I think anger at your own lot, and you've got to blame it. You can't blame it on yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it.
It's got to be somebody else's fault. It can't be your fault. It can't be that you're not smart enough. It can't be that you're not wealthy enough, or that it's your fault.
Right.
In any way.
But one of the stories that fascinates me about my family history, because I'm really into genealogy, is that the Bros, that was my maiden name, Bro, and the first Bros that came over here came from Scotland as indentured servants, and they were came because they were starving. I mean, it was in the paperwork of why they listed that they were signing their indenture. It was because their crops weren't thriving and their animals were dying. So it was George and Barbara Bro, and they were in their 30s when they came, and they had 4 children, and all of them were indentured, from the youngest, who was like 7 at the time, to the oldest, who was like 14 when they got here. And it's a very long and interesting story, but they came 2 years before the revolution. When the revolution started, they turned on the guy that had brought them here, who was a loyalist, a famous loyalist who stayed loyal throughout the entire thing and fought for the British. They turned on him and fought for the revolution. And after the revolution, they were granted land for their service. And one of the first things they did was buy people.
How? Why?
How do you do that? How do you justify that when you, again, I don't want to say that indenture is anything like, because there was a very big difference between indenture and slavery. A lot of people like to say that the Irish were slaves. They were not. It was nothing like chattel slavery that was what happened to African Americans, and before that to Native Americans when we first got here. But anyway, we've probably digressed long enough about our frustrations with racism in general. But it's just, really reading what she went through has brought up a lot in me of just like being baffled by how much hatred people can have. And I'm just so grateful that she didn't get mired down in that and get depressed by that and get so embittered that she just gave up like a lot of people do. She just used it for fuel to go forth and do more. So, but we're going to get back to like the things that we really wanted to make sure that we touched on, because we're getting shorter with time because I've been gabbing here so much. But one of the first things that I had, we've talked about the anti-lynching crusade, the Red Record, which was the 100-page document that she put together when she really started to drill down into her research on lynching. And again, I want to stress, this was the first time anyone had done any real scholarship on it, and she laid it out in brutal fashion. She took them to the woodshed. She put all of these cases together. She put together all of the arguments about how, the evidence of how these were cases of injustice, and she put it out there, into the world. She fought hard to get published, to raise the money to get it published, and it genuinely is one of the foundations of how the tide started to turn during the civil rights movement. Her scholarship and what she did was then built upon by the civil rights activists in the 50s and 60s to get legislation passed to further civil rights. So the world owes her a huge
She
debt.
laid the foundation.
Right. The Columbia Exposition, or exhibition. Let me start that over. The Columbia Exhibition of 1893. Did you read about that?
The World's Fair?
Yes.
Yes.
So, what do you think about that? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
So brave.
Yeah.
I felt like.
Yeah.
To stand there, to question first off, why weren't her people represented?
Right. The Columbia Exhibition was supposed to be a World's Fair where all of the cultures of the United States were supposed, in the world, were supposed to be celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is in one of the cities that has the highest population of African Americans, and they're completely left out for the most part.
Right. She wasn't. It took another. Who invited?
Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass. He wrote the introductory to the pamphlet that she was handing out.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, as far as the World's Fair, who invited Frederick Douglass? Because he was invited. That's who it was. The Haitians.
Yeah, they weren't even going to let him. Like, there was no. The only reason that Frederick Douglass was even allowed to be a participant in this World Fair was because the delegation from Haiti invited.
They invited him.
Yeah.
And so she stood outside the Haitian was it not the Haitian
exhibition.
Thank you.
Why are we having such a hard time with exhibition?
Exhibition. Yeah, I can't say it. She stood outside that handing out her pamphlet.
Yeah. Saying
why
is why black people are not included.
Right.
In this.
Why are we not represented here? And let me lay it out for you.
Yeah. And there were a lot of African American leaders and white civil rights, quote unquote civil rights
mm-hmm.
leaders who were not happy with her for doing that. They felt like she was, again, that was one of the many times that she was told to get back and stay in her lane
mm-hmm.
and try to be patient and be more diplomatic, and she just never took that. She didn't take that road. The other thing, so many committees and clubs. That woman.
It was like a competition to see, like in high school, you
yes.
want to get in the yearbook and have all these little committees and clubs.
Her yearbook page would have been 17 pages long. Yeah.
She won.
She reminds me of, made me laugh and made me think a little bit about when I first started on Facebook, where I would just start a page for every time I got bored. I've got so many pages that I haven't looked at in 50 years on Facebook. I've got a reading club. I've got a swap. I've got just funny memes. And I would just start them and then just let them go. And that's kind of what she did. But she would start them and then put them in good hands.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over, if you don't mind, I'm going to go over some of the committees that she started here. I'm literally just looking at her Wikipedia page. Again, I cannot stress enough, what we really want is for you guys to go and learn more about her on your own. But looking here, let's see, women's clubs. She was active in the women's club movement. In 1893, she organized the Women's Era Club, the first of its kind civic club for African American women in Chicago. She recruited veteran Chicago activist Mary Richardson Jones to serve as the first chair of the new club. So she would just start these clubs and then just go, here you go. I'm bored with this now, or I got other shit to do. I need you to take this over. I got to start
this other club, and I'm going to be secretary or treasurer.
She was one of the founding members of the NAACP. I think we covered that briefly in her biography, mm-hmm. but to be clear, they immediately, they kind of parted ways. There was some debate about whether or not she and W.E.B. Du Bois, who was one of the leading male African American dignitaries of the age, he was much more in line with trying to better black people's lives within just their own communities. Basically almost segregationist in his views, because he didn't want to clash too much with white people. So she was very much like, no, we're Americans. We're going to demand American rights. Segregation doesn't work for anyone.
There shouldn't be any difference between.
Right. So she started the NAACP with them, but almost immediately parted ways because she felt like that they were way too accommodating, and that frankly there were too many white people in charge of the national advancement of colored people.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound super crazy to me.
No.
She took part in a meeting in Washington, D.C. that founded the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. She also helped organize the National Afro-American Council, serving as this organization's first secretary. School segregation, when they tried to resegregate schools in Chicago, she stopped that. And well, I say resegregate. I don't know if you read any about this, but she, in 1890, there was this popular movement. There was a journalist, an editor who was really pushing to have Chicago schools segregated. And I say resegregated, but they actually were never segregated. That was something that I learned in my research, was that Chicago, I guess because it was in the North, and generally there weren't very many black people until after Jim Crow started. And one of the reasons that so many people fled from the South to Chicago specifically was because of Ida Wells, because she started putting in black newspapers, leave, take your money and your life and come up here where you're going to have a better chance at having a more equal rights.
And that was something I did read about her. She was maybe not the first boycotter, but she was definitely a proponent of boycott.
Yeah.
Show them that your money is just as valid or spends just as much as someone else. Leave.
Yeah.
Take your money and go.
Yeah, I read something today that she actually, her call to, for black people, especially after what happened with Thomas Moss, that when she told them, you're not welcome and you're not safe there, come here, it actually meant this took a big financial hit when that happened. So
she pushed for that at the World's Fair too.
Yeah.
To boycott the Colored People Day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To not come.
She's so smart.
At her time.
But yeah, so the Chicago Tribune published a series of articles suggesting the adoption of a system of racial segregation in public schools. Given her experience as a school teacher in segregated systems of the South, she wrote to the publisher on the failures of segregated school systems and the successes of integrated public schools. She then went to his office and lobbied him. Unsatisfied, she then enlisted social reformer Jane Addams. She and the group that she put together with Addams are credited with stopping the adoption of an officially segregated school system. I mean, she literally turned the tide of history there. I mean, because it could have gone the other way.
If no one had stepped up to say anything.
Yeah.
And Ida was there to step up and say.
It's just amazing so many times in her life. I know I keep saying this, but so many of us, I genuinely believe, go through life and die way before we die, before we put in the ground. We just give up. Things are just too hard, and I don't want to be too hard on people because God knows I wake up exhausted most days. But I do think that most of us are we allow our hurts and our woes and our health, just all of it, to make us so cynical that we genuinely think one person can't change things, because things can really feel overwhelming. I am so staggered by how many times this woman was literally a stopgap between the flood of horrible things that could happen if she weren't there to speak up. I mean, she's one of the few people that I can look at and I can say unequivocally, this world would have been a much worse place if Ida B. Wells wasn't Ida B. Wells, and if she didn't do the things that she did. Suffragism. She was a big suffragette. She firmly believed in feminism. Her marriage, that is such a crazy marriage.
So ahead of its time.
I want to know so much about that. Part of, again, my frustration with all of this is that as much as we know about her, we know so little about her. We know the facts because she documented so much of her life in journalism and writing, and she kept a diary of, not really a diary, but I guess like a day journal of just, her events and things like that. But because she was so mouthy, because she was so blunt, and she was so aggressive about, and I wish I could think of another word for, except that, because aggressive has ugly connotations. I think that's how she was, but she was determined in her, and she did not get sidetracked or frightened off of what she believed was right. And if she didn't do that, there were just so many times that this world would have really been a much worse place in 2025 if Ida Wells hadn't existed in the late 1800s through the early 1900s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's really remarkable to me. But one of those ways is that she was a suffragette, and she, even in that, she was one of the first women to, I don't think the term intersectional feminism was, or intersectionality was invented then, but that's what she was. I mean, she was one of the first women to talk about how it's all well and good, you know, if black women don't have rights, then no women's rights are safe.
Yeah.
And she was one of the first ones to point out it's all well and good for you to get up and, you know, march for your rights, white lady, but if you are trying to deny those same rights to your black sisters, then you are no better than the people that are oppressing you.
Right. And to not recognize that
is insane.
I can't.
Again, another one of those moments where you're like, how does the hypocrisy not choke you to death of what you're doing?
It's okay to take away someone else's rights as long as you have your rights. No.
Right.
Because that just means that someone else can take your rights away
exactly.
at some point.
And that's kind of the argument that she worked from. And I admire that so much. One of the things, like, I am way too prone to just come out swinging. Ida was aggressive with her stance, but she was never emotional. She was cool, you know? Like, she didn't let them see her cry or see her down or, you know, she argued every stupid point with logic.
Which I have a hard time doing because I tend to be the emotional. When I get...
Same.
I get emotional and then I get angry and then there's no making sense.
Right, exactly.
Like, just, I cry. Why can't you understand? Yeah, there's tears.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why you don't see this. It's just basic humanity. Why can't...
And you get flustered.
I know, and there's no... I can't bring facts up anymore. It's just, you're stupid and this is what it is. And
your brain freezes.
I know, yeah. I just...
Like, when the anger takes over... and I'm the same way. Like, I am not a crier, but when I'm very angry, I will cry. And it's not because I'm sad or I'm trying to make you feel sorry for me. I'm just so frustrated.
So frustrated.
Right. But this woman who faced far more challenges than we can ever dream of, she just kept it together, man. And she just kept marching and she kept pushing ahead and she kept insisting on better. And I don't know how she did it, but thank God she did.
Another thing to admire about her, and I admire people
Me too.
that have that ability to stay calm and collected and firm.
Yeah.
And bring facts and can...
Yeah, it's all of those things.
Yeah.
It's calm, collected, and firm.
Yeah.
Like, I feel, I don't know how much she would have liked me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that she would have been real interested in this day and age and necessarily, but I love her.
Right.
You know?
That's okay. She doesn't have to like me.
Right.
Even know me.
Yeah.
But
I would just be a groupie. Like, just to sit and watch her stand her ground on so many things. Because, again, my whole life, I've been told that I am pushy or aggressive or bossy or what's obnoxious. All of those words have been used for me because I have a tendency to when I get in my, you know, that's not right, my do-gooder crusader type of time frame, when I see something that I think is an injustice or it's not right, or just a fact that people, or a quote-unquote fact that people believe, and I know that it's not true, I can be really obnoxious about that. But it's hard for me to understand why that's obnoxious to people, because to me, it's just logic. But again, I don't want to sound like I'm comparing myself in any way, shape, or form to Ida B.Wells. I am inferior in every single way to that woman, but I can identify with that idea of being told your whole life that you're not being demure enough, that you're not being sweet enough, that you're not likable. I'm not a very likable person. And I'm not saying that because I need you to tell me. I know you like me. I know you love me. I love you too. But you also, if you're honest with yourself, aren't real shocked when I say...
You've been kicked out of a few groups.
Exactly. Yes. I have lost some peer groups along the way because of my stance on some things. And so I can recognize that and I can understand that. And I love her ability to not give a shit. Because that's the difference between us. I do care.
Yeah.
Like all of the people that I have lost because I have had to part ways with them or they've parted ways with me because I'm too much. I do still miss those people. I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't care. But I do. But I mean, one of our, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He keeps showing up on my page for Dinner for Her. His feed keeps showing up. And I want to block it, but I still care about him. And I want him to be okay. And I wish we lived in a world where we saw eye to eye on more things. But that's just not the reality of it. That's just not how it is. But I love that she seemed to be very unbothered by all of that stuff. That I'm sure she had feelings about it, but she didn't let it mire her down.
No, she didn't let a whole lot mire her down.
No.
If anything.
Now, I read a quote. One of the quotes I read was she was talking about her children, when she got married and how grateful she was for having a husband like hers because I can't remember what exactly the quote was, but basically she said her only real love was her crusade, her journalism, her work. And I think that was a little bit of hyperbole. I think she genuinely seemed to have real affection for her husband, and they seem to have a true partnership. But yeah, first and foremost, she was about the mission.
Yeah. Well, she had to be. I mean, honestly, she had colored children that were going to be growing up, and she wanted a better world, I'm sure, at least in some part.
Yeah.
For her
I think that was part of it. But
children,
I think she just very much felt
people.
Yeah, I think she just very much felt like she was a woman of her people.
Right.
What they back then they would call, what they kept saying about her father, that he was a race man. And that came up in the Zora Neale Hurston episode of that concept of a race man or a race woman, and it just inherently meant somebody that was very much that was their entire drive, was to be passionately advocating for the advancement of Black people, and she was very much that person, even before she had children. But you're right, I imagine that made it doubly important to her, that she tried to leave a better world for them when she was gone, and she didn't live long. So it was almost like she knew, that time was short and that she had to just keep it moving. But I want to talk about, going back to the suffragette part, one of the things I want to make sure that we mention is when she forcibly integrated the white suffragette march. And I'm just reading straight from Wikipedia here. A prominent Black suffragette, Wells had strong positions against racism, violence, and lynching that brought her into conflict with leaders of largely white suffrage organizations. Perhaps the most notable example of this conflict was her public disagreement with Frances Willard, the first president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. You always got to bring Jesus into your bigotry. Why?
Always.
Today, oh man, another one of those parallels with today is why you got to bring Jesus into your hatred.
And that's another thing I have never understood.
Especially, and it's fascinating to me that it was a women's Christian temperance organization, because one of the things about Ida is that she was deeply religious. She was incredibly Christian and very strong in her Christian faith. And, her first writing was for a church newspaper.
Right.
And she never lost that faith. And one of the reasons that she didn't want to be in the smoking car was because she was very much she was kind of a classy lady, She loved clothes. She loved to be, put together. She was very poised. She wanted to be with the rabble back there.
She paid for that ticket.
She paid for that ticket, and she felt like that she had, and she was right, had every right to the same dignity and respect that a white woman had. So back to this march. The WCTU was a predominantly white women's organization with branches in every state and a growing membership, including in the southern U.S., where segregation laws and lynching occurred. With roots in the call for temperance and sobriety, the organization later became a powerful advocate for the suffrage in the United States. In 1893, Wells and Willard traveled separately to Britain on lecture tours. Willard was promoting temperance as well as suffrage for women, and Wells was calling attention to lynching in the U.S. The basis of their dispute was Wells' public statement that Willard was silent on the issue of lynching. Wells referred to an interview Willard had conducted during her tour of the American South, in which Willard had blamed African Americans' behaviors for the defeat of the temperance legislation. The colored race multiplies like the locusts of Egypt, Willard had said, and the grog shop is its center of power. Gross. Grog shop is like the bars. Saloons. The safety of women, of children, of the home is menaced in 1,000 localities so that men dare not go beyond the side of their own roof tree. So, yeah, she just called them out there, but the story that I was going to tell about the march was yet another one of those clubs that she was part of. In the years following the dispute with Willard, Wells continued her anti-lynching campaign and organizing in Chicago. She focused her work on black women's suffrage in the city following the enactment of the new state law enabling partial women's suffrage. Yeah, that was another thing I learned. In Illinois, women could vote before suffrage was passed, before the 19th Amendment was passed. They could only vote in certain situations. And apparently there were very few, but there were other states where in a limited capacity women were given the right to vote. In Illinois, they were given the right to vote for presidential electors, not the president himself, but for the electors, mayor, alderman, and most other local offices, but not for governors, state representatives, or members of Congress. The prospect of passing the act, even one of partial enfranchisement, was the impetus for Wells and her white colleagues, Belle Squire, to organize the Alpha Suffrage Club, yet another club, in Chicago on January 30th, 1913. One of the most important black suffrage organizations in Chicago, the Alpha Suffrage Club, was founded as a way to further voting rights for all women, to teach black women how to engage in civic matters, and to work to elect African Americans to city office. 2 years after its founding, the club played a significant role in electing Oscar DePriest as the first African American alderman in Chicago. Yeah, here we go. As Wells and Squire were organizing the Alpha Club, the National American Women's Suffrage Association, or NALSA, just lost that, was organizing a suffrage parade in Washington, D.C. Marching the day before the inauguration of Woodrow Wilson as president in 1913, suffragists from across the country gathered to demand universal suffrage. Wells, together with a delegation of members from Chicago, attended. On the day of the march, the head of the Illinois delegation told the Wells delegates that the NALSA wanted to keep the delegation entirely white, and all African American suffragists, including Wells, were to walk at the end of the parade in the colored delegation. So what did our girl do? Instead of going to the back with the other African Americans, Wells waited with spectators as the parade was underway and stepped into the white Illinois delegation as they passed by. She visibly linked arms with her white suffragist colleagues, Squire and Virginia Brooks, for the rest of the parade, demonstrating, according to the Chicago Defender, the universality of women's civil rights movement. That was one of the great, that's one of the moments in history that I now wish I could, if I had a time machine, I would go back just to watch her, the look on those women's faces when she just popped up out of the crowd. It was like, come on, girls.
We're going to lead this march.
Yeah. Like, do you think they were like, oh, no? Or did they plan it with her? Like, those two women. I don't know. That wasn't clear. If they were as surprised as everyone else when she showed up to link arms, or if it was just, like, something they had pre-planned. I don't know. Either way, I wish I had been there to see it. But yeah, those are the most of the things. I don't know. Do you have anything else that you wanted to cover that I've left out here? Because those are the really big points that I wanted to get across, was just how far-reaching her advocacy was.
I didn't realize until doing some research. Did you know she had the Nobel Prize was awarded to her?
No way.
Posthumously?
No. Good for her.
2020 that they did that.
Wow. I did see that, like, we talked a little bit about that she has several different, I don't know what the right word is for it, not scholarships, but she's got schools of journalism. She's
got a society, the B.Wells Society for Investigative Reporting.
Yeah. And that's in the South, isn't it? Is that in Memphis? I believe that's in Memphis.
I think it's in Memphis.
Yeah.
They have a scholarship, too, or that they award every year, so for internships. Yeah, there is an Ida B. Wells Foundation as well. I mean, she really has had a resurgence in more and more people. Like, you know, I'm saying
again, I'm going to reiterate how poorly equipped, both in knowledge and skin tone, that we really are to be the ones that are leading any kind of charge on, or trying to. We are definitely not pretending to be experts on Ida Wells. But one of the cool things that I found out is that a lot of the reason that she did start to have her accomplishments acknowledged was because of her descendants. Her daughter finally published her unfinished biography, her autobiography that she was writing, which ended mid-sentence.
Yeah,
I love
I saw
that. Like she
didn't even finish it mid-thought.
No, right. That just is so her, that like up until the very end, she was still just going, trying to accomplish things. So her daughter finished it up, and they published it in the 70s, and after that people started to do a little bit more research, and all of the accolades that have come since then are largely due to that, and her great-granddaughter, a woman named Michelle Duster, who has become, I think it's safe to say, the preeminent scholar on her grandmother in the world. And she has written several books, including a children's book about Ida and her legacy, and she has done countless lectures you can find online, and speeches talking about her grandmother. And I would just love to meet her, because I want to know if there are a lot, the family stories that we all have. I want to know those stories about her. I want to know what they know about who she was at home with her family, with her kids, with her husband. What did she like to eat? What did she like to,
Did she ever relax?
Did the woman ever relax?
Was she just, always going?
Like the Energizer Bunny?
Seems like, or was there, it's Mama's wine time in the closet?
Right. I don't think she ever had wine time.
I don't think she probably didn't.
She had to have something that was relaxing at some point.
Right?
Yeah. But I would love to meet that lady one day. I would love to learn. And I am going to definitely spend more time educating myself about Ida, and this poor this poor offering of this podcast that we're putting out. This is only my 5th episode doing this series that I love so much, but I'm sure I will learn more and more and more as time goes on. And I think I could see you and I one day, a year or so from now, sitting down and revisiting
Ida.
This episode, and Ida in general, maybe like focusing, instead of trying to do this broad reaching, encompassing everything that she's done in an hour or so, we can maybe drill down on specific episodes in her life and really do them justice. I cannot emphasize enough how much it's changed me to do this episode. I'm so angry that we didn't learn more about her in history. I mean, we owe her so much, all of us.
Yeah.
Especially women, especially, right. I mean, of course, African Americans, but women in general, and Americans, period, because segregation is not good for any of us. No. Loss of civil rights for anybody is potential loss of civil rights for all of us.
Yeah, and the fact that people don't see that still amazes me.
Yeah, I had one of my black friends recently, I can't get too specific about it, but in her professional setting, in a very concerning professional setting, in a place that it definitely should not have been verbalized, her boss told her that he wants to go back to a time when only landowners were allowed to vote. What color were those landowners?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, they're becoming bolder.
They're feeling the power to be more bold.
Mm-hmm. And that really is the message of Ida, is that if we don't fight for these rights, they can be taken from us again, and will be taken from us again.
I still feel like there's active attempts to do that now.
Mm-hmm. All you have to do is read the comment section of any article that you read about women's rights, or the wage gap, or the violence against women. You will just see thousands of men
in the and unsettlingly sometimes women in the the comment section talking about how horrible women are and how inferior we are and how unequal to the task we are. I have, we have female social media influencers talking about how the 19th Amendment needs to be repealed, that we shouldn't have the right to vote. Other women saying this.
Which floors me and scares me.
Right. I think we are very much in a time that is reminiscent of Reconstruction. And I'm going to reiterate that point before we go to get our dinner plates together that I am dying to eat. I have been cooking this meal for the last 5 hours, so I'm very, very excited. But I want to reiterate that I think that one of the real lessons that Ida has is that she was born in a time where she saw rights being stripped away that people had been utilizing and felt were their God-given rights. If we believe in the Constitution, she saw those taken away in her lifetime. And the only reason that it wasn't worse was because of people like her, brave enough to stand up and point out the injustice at the risk of their life.
Yeah.
More than once.
Yeah.
She was very close to being murdered. I don't know if we covered this when we were talking about when she left. I think we did in the body of
very briefly.
But she literally, they were watching the railroads.
Yeah.
Waiting
for her to come back.
Right. White men were saying in the newspapers horrible things about what they were going to do to her if she came back. But she stood up and she did it, and it's going to take more of us doing that, not getting bogged down in despair. That's my entire. And again, please no one out there think that I'm comparing myself in any way, shape, or form to Ida B.Wells. But that is a lot of my mission here, is to try to get more of us engaged in learning about the women who came before us, who had to do this fighting, because for us to be born into a world where we had more rights than our mothers, we are now at a point where our daughters have fewer rights than we were born with.
Right.
And if we don't want to see more and more and more of those repealed and stripped away, we have to see it for what it is and stand up to it. We have to understand it, and we have to be able to combat it with Ida's tools, firmness, education, determination, bravery.
Blunt.
Right. Don't be afraid to be called a bitch.
No. Call people.
Yeah. Just, don't be afraid. Yeah. Don't get killed or marginalized because you're being too polite. We got to get over that.
Yeah.
And God love her. That was never Ida's problem, and it's one of the things I love the most about her. So, do you have anything else you want to add here before we go start having dinner?
I think just people need to go. They need to go read about Ida.
You need to
Deep dive.
Yeah. Like, don't just, if you hear her words, take this, get off, as soon as you hit stop, when you have a moment, just start with Wikipedia and it will take you down a million rabbit holes. There's tons of resources. The woman did everything in the world. You could spend years probably studying her and not learn everything, and you will be amazed at how much of a debt you owe to Ida B.Wells. So we're going to break here. We're going to go and get our plates made, and then we will come back and enjoy this meal that we have based on Ida's life. All right, we're back. About to tear into this meal. So, as I've mentioned, I think every episode, the reason that this is dinner for her and the dinner portion is part of the whole experience is because I think food is a really humanizing thing that we all, it's just something that is common to every single person on this planet. And I think that, again, with part of my goal being to try to make the audience more attuned to the humanity of the people that we're talking about, and that these were real people that really existed and they did real work to try to make this world a better place. I've been really lucky before this episode, because every single person that had my co-hosts have chosen, just serendipitously, they have, when I start looking around, something in their life real regarding food immediately jumped out. Whether it was like with Eleanor Roosevelt, where it was like she had that policy with the White House that because it was the middle of the Depression that they were going to eat just like she imagined normal everyday Americans were eating. I would argue they were eating far worse than the average American was, because the average American knew how to use spices and wasn't eating, disgusting eggs with the yolks mashed up with onions covered in hot sauce.
Oh, no.
Yeah, oh, that's still the least pleasant experience. The rabbit was much better with Eartha Kitt. But this is the first time I could not, of everything that woman did, I don't think she ate.
She had to, somewhere along
You
the
would
way.
think. She seemed to be a person that, like, with everything else that was going on, she was very earthy. Like, she loved, like I said, one of the things I learned is she loved clothes. She had a beautiful home. Like, they were fairly well-to-do. I mean, they lived, and she deliberately chose to live with her people. She didn't want to live, but she pushed the envelope to, live as close as possible to the wider areas, not because she wanted proximity to whiteness, but because she wanted to advance her people into, her goal was to integrate all of society. But at any rate, I couldn't find anything about like what she liked to eat, restaurants she might have enjoyed, recipes. The only really mentions of food that I could find in her story were that her mother was a cook, a famous cook, that was said more than once. And that when she was helping to raise her siblings after her parents passed, she would get off work, come home, take the train, come home, feed them dinner, get up in the morning, do the cleaning and preparing for the day before she left. So she obviously was a good cook, or at least a competent cook. Probably good because her mother was so good. But no mention of what she liked to eat. Nothing. So I was racking my brains trying to figure out what to do for this meal. And what I landed on, I finally landed on soul food, because what I found through my research was that because of the Great Migration, which she was an early part of, and again, her mother was a Southern cook, most of the Black people that came into Chicago, and still to this day, a lot of the home cooking for Black people is just like we eat here in the South. A lot of fried foods, a lot of veggies of different, in every kind of sauce that you can possibly imagine, a lot of meat. So I found, like Robin and I, looked online, and we found what was the oldest Black soul food restaurant in Chicago, and it's 50 years old. It's called St. Rest No. 2 Country Kitchen, I believe. And it's 50 years old, but the recipes are actually based on the owner's grandmother, who would have been alive, I'm guessing, probably towards the end of Ida's life. And that was just as close as I could get to authenticity, but I still feel very weird about it, because what if she really liked French food? Or she was pretty cosmopolitan.
She was, yeah. She toured Europe twice. Right.
She loved the finer things. And so, Ida, if you're somewhere and you're like, I love duck confit or something like that, I am very sorry, but I just had to go with my best guess, and it doesn't hurt that this is actually the kind of food I prefer to eat. So what we landed on was it is baby back ribs, smoked baby back ribs, smothered in my homemade barbecue sauce. Robin made some delicious succotash, baked macaroni, green beans with turkey neck that I've cooked in a slow cooker all day, and corn muffins. So, and for dessert, we've got peach cobbler that Robin also made from scratch today in her kitchen at work. So here we go. I'm going to try this succotash because I've never had it.
Going for the green beans, which are really good.
Yeah, I've never cooked turkey neck before. I usually cook them with ham hock. Succotash really does taste like
a vegetable soup.
Yeah, tastes like vegetable soup. Let me get one of these ribs here. The macaroni, my kid Jackson, he loves macaroni. Would live on macaroni. When he was little, like very little, when I would pick him up from daycare, he would always be starving, and he would cry because I wouldn't let him eat raw macaroni when we got home because he didn't want to wait for it to get cooked. But I didn't know if he'd eat this because he loves like that 99-cent powdered
blue the blue box.
Yeah, would get mad at me when I would buy the generic with like the fancy Velveeta cheese. So I didn't know.
Cheese.
But this is the first time I've made baked macaroni, and I don't think it turned out too bad.
No, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's try that.
I think I can make some improvement next time, but it's not terrible.
No, it's good.
These ribs. If you guys can hear June, whom you've heard enough about to know that she is the demon in a dog's body that is haunting me, is standing out here barking because she knows we're in here eating food. Sorry, June. These ribs are delicious.
The ribs are really good.
Yep, this has been a great episode, guys. I hope that I haven't rambled too much. I feel like there was a lot for us to try to squeeze in a pretty short period of time. And just to reiterate, we have barely scratched the surface of this woman's life. Every single American owes her a debt of gratitude. I highly encourage you to go and educate yourself more about Ida. And take a little bite here of this peach cobbler before we start our wind down, because I need to see what this is all about. I haven't had peach cobbler in 20 years probably. It's very good, Robin. That's like,
thank you.
Most of the cobbler I've had is crunchy. Like it doesn't, this is more like a bread pudding cobbler almost. Like it's softer. I don't know if that's the word,
Yeah, it's not a pie crust. Some seem to have like a pie crust.
Yeah. But this is more like a bread pudding with peaches in it, and then we got some vanilla bean ice cream. So good. This might be my favorite part. I mean, those ribs are good, but this peach cobbler's where it's at. All right. So as we wrap it up here, I would like to go over our sources for this podcast. It seems like there were about 1,000 of them, but the primary sources were Southern Horrors, Lynch Laws in All Its Phases by Ida B. Wells-Barnett. I don't think we talked enough about the fact that she hyphenated her name in a time when almost no women outside of royalty did that. I love that woman. Chicago Stories, Ida B. Wells, a Chicago Story special, season 1 on PBS. You can find that online. I got it from Amazon. Ida B. Wells, A Passion for Justice on YouTube. The Ida B. Wells-Barnett entry in the National Women's History Museum. That is a great resource. Did you check that out?
I did check that out. That's where a lot of my documents came from that I printed.
I could spend days on there, and I fully plan on diving back into that as a resource going down the road. I can't thank the Ida B. Wells section of Wikipedia enough, because we obviously did extensive research, but just to keep it all in a linear fashion, I kept going back to Wikipedia.
It's a very nice summary, kind of bullet point almost.
Right. The Humanity Archive podcast episode, Lynched, Ida B. Wells, and the Truth That Shook America, and the Stuff You Missed in History podcast episode, Ida B. Wells-Barnett. If you would like to get in touch with me, leave feedback, or just say hi, you can email or send me a voice message as an attachment at dinnerforher@gmail.com. You can visit my Facebook page where there will be a post for the next episode, and you can leave feedback in the comments section or send a message through Facebook Messenger. I can be found on TikTok and Instagram at dinnerforher. I would really appreciate it if you would review, comment, like, and or share on your podcast listening app of choice. Anytime you do that, it helps to get the podcast out in the algorithm and push it towards people that might be interested in the subject. So anytime that you could just take a moment to do that, I really would appreciate it. I haven't done feedback on any of our episodes yet because, quite frankly, I haven't gotten a lot of it. I'm really impressed at how much we're moving forward as far as listeners every single week. I don't take that for granted. But if you have a moment, please do leave some feedback, and I will promise you, if you leave me some substantive comments, I will work them into the next episode. I'm going to that's going forward, something I'm going to start trying to work on is a little more structure and building in some time at the end where we can go over any feedback that I might have gotten from prior episodes, because I want this to be a conversation with not just whoever my co-host is for that episode, but all of you out there listening. And another thing, if you have suggestions for future episodes, if you have thoughts on women that you'd like to cover, and absolutely, if you can hear the sound of my voice and you are a woman and you want to be on this podcast, I don't care where you are in the world, we will do everything we can to make that happen. I haven't done a remote episode where one of us is in one place and the other is in another yet, but I have thoughts on that and we can definitely make it happen. So yeah, speak up. I want to give a big thank you to Mark and Pirate Core Entertainment for all of his hard work and for giving me this platform. Please visit the Pirate Core website and their Facebook page where you can find this podcast and many more, including my other project, What's On Tonight, with my friend Becky, which also has its own Facebook page. What's On Tonight is a spoiler-filled podcast about TV, movies, and more. Right now, we're wrapping up the first season of the Amazon original thriller, The Other Season. I say wrapping up. We're not wrapping up. We just started it. It's crazy. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, man.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about this after we let the audience go here. It's insane. Very good. If you're not watching it, you should be. Check us out and join the conversation. Lastly, I want to give all the thanks in the world to Robbo. I know by now you all love her as much as I do, and in addition to being kind, funny, and intelligent, she is also one of the hardest working people I know. Doing this episode was a big commitment in time, and with this episode, the emotional bandwidth was not to be sneezed at. It took a toll on me emotionally, so I know it probably did you as well. And I love you so much, my friend.
I love you. Thank you for doing this podcast, for doing this whole series, because women need to know about these women.
Yeah.
People in general need to know about these women and the important roles that they played in history.
I agree, and I say that, and I don't want anybody to think I do not overestimate my talent in any of this. I am raw dogging it. I am teaching myself new stuff every week, and I don't make any money for this. It's a labor of love, and frankly, any of you could do it, and I encourage any of you to do it. Find your own project. More of us need to stop. If the lesson of Ida tells us anything, it's that more of us need to get off our ass, quit being frustrated, quit being shocked, quit being hurt. You know, you can feel all of those things, but don't let it paralyze you. Get up and do something, because if her life proves anything, it's that one person absolutely can change the course of the world. And you could be that person. We all could. As always, we want to let our guest of honor have the last word here. There were so many quotes I could have used. Ida was just so articulate and intelligent, and she, like, to quote Hamilton, she seemed to write like she was running out of time. So there were a million ones that I could have picked, but this is the one I think that speaks the most to a lesson we all need to learn given the climate of today. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and it does seem to me that notwithstanding all these social agencies and activities, there is not that vigilance which should be exercised in the preservation of our rights. Thank you, everyone, and please come back next time to see what incredible, powerful woman will be joining us for dinner.